Harris is a wonderful lived experience peer worker. She is in a position at Mental Illness Fellowship WA. She's a very experienced trainer. I believe you're a master trainer for the mental health first aid now, are you, Hayley? Yes.
I am.
I thought so. Hayley's done lots and lots of training, people of lived experience, and probably lots of other audiences as well, and is also trained with me, didn't you, Hayley, as Alternatives to Suicide facilitator. So we've done that together, and there's probably lots of things that I might miss, Hayley, with my nerves. But you are a very experienced peer worker. You are a wonderful asset to MIFWA and MIFBA. And yes, I hope that you really enjoy your facilitation with us today. I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm going to stop talking and just pass over to you, Hayley, okay?
Thanks, Phoebe. Thanks so much. And thanks for everyone who's been sharing and speaking today. I've gained so much. And thanks, you've done most of my intro for me. So thanks so much, Phoebe. And yes, my name is Hayley Harris. I'm joining today from Wajak Noongar Budja in WA. And I've got lifelong lived experience of mental health issues. As Phoebe said, I'm excited to be facilitating this afternoon's panel. No matter where you are, I think we're probably all in the afternoon. Shortly, I will be introducing you to each of our lived experience panelists, but first I want to briefly discuss the theme of this panel, intersectionality. Intersectionality is the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and oppression, and we must consider everything and anything that can marginalise people. So, for example, what does that actually look like, and what does that mean in the context of what we're discussing today? So let's say a person has mental health issues. So a person who's living with mental health issues, and that's their experience. And that experience might bring with it marginalisation, discrimination, or unjust treatment. If that person also has an intersecting experience of neurodivergency, for example, then they also have that layer of unjust treatment or marginalisation that could occur. And let's say that person also is culturally and linguistically diverse, and that adds another layer. And those three experiences intersect. And so that's part of what we're discussing today. Finding North and Finding North Network is committed to amplifying various voices of lived experience and hearing multiple perspectives. So today is just the tip of the iceberg with these three amazing panelists. There is a lot more work to be done and many more voices that we want to hear in these conversations. So let's all try to get Perspectives 2023 happening for more perspectives. But let me now present you to our three panelists. Each person will briefly introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Laura Lewis with a brief introduction.
Hi, I'm Laura Lewis, and I live and work on Quandamooka country. And the favourite part of my life is my family. And then next would be the both challenges and rewarding and enriching experiences I've had from a lived experience of mental illness. I've had a lot of really great achievements, and I like to say that I thrive, achieve, and falter with a mental illness.
Thank you so much, Laura. The next person that we're going to meet again is John Shearer.
Yeah, thanks, Hayley. I have 15 years lived experience as a consumer. And I use that these days, really. Now I consider myself recovered, and I mentor people because I'm very passionate about the fact that I was stuck in the mental health system for so long, for one thing, 15 years. Yeah, so that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Thanks so much, John. And finally, Richard is going to come off mute and introduce himself briefly.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, 75 years of age, diagnosed with chronic PTSD in 1995. I've spent from then until now researching PTSD and trying to make people very aware of exactly what it is, not just from a psychologist's point of view. there's a lot of nuances within PTSD that don't get addressed and people don't understand. So that's my objective, is to create a lot more awareness about PTSD and what it does to you.
Thanks, Richard. And I think that what you've just touched on is the value that all of you are able to bring, is that you're sharing your lived experience and your perspective. And that means we really get it. We're really going to gain more awareness rather than just reading a book. So let's start with our first question. I'm going to open it up to Laura first. How has your particular intersectionality affected your mental health and health in general?
Intersectionality is for me as a 53-year-old, a really recent term, like say 5 years in my life. Up to the age of 49, I thought I was broken. I thought I was damaged and there was something severely wrong with me, because I felt like I was the only person in the world who had the struggles and thoughts and experiences. And receiving the autism diagnosis, closely followed by the ADHD diagnosis, was just so amazing. It helped me process and gain perspective about my backstory, and it helped me lower my mask and ease into, you know, a life of where I can reclaim my identity. And yeah, it's I look at it as, you know, while acknowledging the discriminations, but there's lots of advantages of having it as well.
Thanks, Laura. And Richard, same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, I was only introduced to the term 3 weeks ago, so I spent a lot of time looking at it and working out what it meant to me. And there's probably a lot of intersectionality has gone on in my life that I've experienced, but I will just concentrate on one particular area, which is probably the area that was the catalyst to my chronic PTSD. And that was the conflict between a returned serviceman and a serviceman getting back into society or getting back into civilian life versus civilian life, and the attitudes that were coming out at that particular time. We weren't welcomed home. We struggled with lack of understanding of why people were shunning us. We were kicked out of our own RSL clubs because we didn't win the war over there. We were simply doing our job. We were trained to do that job in Vietnam. But there was no thanks when we came back. You'd all remember that it took something like 16 years for us to have a welcome home parade in Sydney. The public's attitude about Vietnam changed a lot during the 1965 to 72. It gradually got worse simply because the media was doing a lot of writing about it. They were picking up on a lot of atrocities that American soldiers were doing, but we wore the mud as it was flung. We were told we were baby killers. We were spat on. We had false blood thrown at us. I stopped going to Anzac marches because people would be booing you and all sorts of stuff. So that it was that treatment, including my family. They shunned me. They were making excuses for me without me knowing. They were telling everybody that I didn't want to talk about it, when in fact the voices inside my head were screaming out, saying, I need to talk about it. I need somebody to listen and understand what I'm trying to do or what I'm going through. It was even the federal government, who were the ones that sent us over there in the first place, DVA, psychiatrists, psychologists, were all, well, we felt they were all against us. You didn't dare try to do a claim through DVA first up, because the process was so difficult. I'm sure it was set up that we would fail if we put in a claim. It took me a long time for my claim to go through. Sorry, I just forgot where I was at. So that intersectionality between the ex-serviceman or the Vietnam veteran, we gained a very bad, as public figures, we were definitely shunned. I remember a lot of domestic violence occurred, and it was blamed on the fact that that person was a Vietnam veteran, when in some cases he was just calling for help anyway. So I was diagnosed in 1995, and then spent a lot of time researching PTSD and researching intersectionality. I've also come up with the idea that I have an inner personal intersectionality that caused quite a lot of conflict, and probably caused quite a bit of the PTSD. And that was, before I went to Vietnam, I was kind, I was empathetic, I was caring, loving, from a good family. Everything was sweet. But of course, Vietnam changes you. When I came back, I really questioned my motive as to why I went. I volunteered to go. I actually maneuvered my way in the Air Force to be in a position where I knew I was going to Vietnam. But I realized when I was over there that we really shouldn't have been there. So having been trained to fight and coming back and realizing that that was totally against all my original values and principles, I really questioned my motives. I just didn't know what to do with it, and that's been a conflict for a long time. So that's one little experience with intersectionality.
Thanks, Richard. And I think that kind of, I guess, a theme that I'm picking up between yourself and Laura as well, maybe phrasing it different, but that idea of the mask coming down. But in some ways, you actually had to look in what was behind the mask. And in some ways, it sounds like your family and your community were trying to force the mask onto you. Don't talk about it. We don't want to hear about it. Hide behind it.
Yeah.
And Laura, your own experience of lowering your mask and claiming your identity. And that's really important. I think the analogy of masks, or the example of masks, often comes up when we talk about mental health issues, but there's lots of different ways we can look at it. Richard, you briefly touched on your experience with the DVA, is that the Department of Veterans Affairs?
Yes.
So let's unpack a little bit. I'm going to ask John a question in a minute and then come back to you, Richard.
Sure.
But I want to hear about the experiences that people have had with service providers. So John, can you share your experience with service providers?
Yeah, my experience with service providers hasn't been altogether favourable, because what I find is service providers are often get their funding from government and what have you, and they actually turn themselves, well, they've got to do it the way they're kind of told to do it, it's like if you're getting paid to do a job, you do it like the boss says, in a way. But what the disappointing part is, they really become funnels for the system. I call it the system. And when I say the system, I'm really talking about the medical model, if you like. Whereas someone, you know, goes to the doctor, and even quite often when you ring crisis lines, you know, they're trained for you to seek help, go and see your doctor, and then that often leads to medication and diagnosis, and then before you know it, you're stuck in the system. That's what I found. So I kind of really tried to have nothing really much to do with them, you know, because of that. And eventually, when an old friend, after 15 years of being stuck in that system, an old friend of mine knocked on my door one day, and I hadn't seen him for nearly 20 years actually, and he said that he had a spiritual prompt when he was passing through town to come and knock on my door and share his story. Well, that story sort of led to my awakening, and I got my life back. And, you know, eventually that led to what I'm doing today, and that's mentoring people who might have been diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar or hearing voices, psychosis, because they're often told, like I was, that they can't be cured and will have to take medication for the rest of their life. And they're often not working, and even told that they aren't suitable for work. And that's the system. And honestly, when we start looking at more holistic ways of recovery and start getting in touch with our spiritual selves, that's what did it for me. And I know that's what does it for heaps of people. And I've witnessed like probably hundreds of people who have got their lives back just by finding a spiritual self. You know, if I can just share a short story. About 8:30 one morning, a while back, I got a phone call, and the girl was saying, John, the first thing she said, John, I don't want to be alive anymore. Whoa, I said, well, you know, go on, tell me more. And it turned out that, you know, she was at a funeral the week before, and someone suggested that she contact me. And she said to me, she didn't want to have anything further to do with the mental health system because all they wanted to do was medicate her. So I said, can you come into town? She actually lived 40 k's out of town, and she could, so she did. She come in and we had a yarn, and I taught her some Aboriginal techniques. She wasn't Aboriginal herself, but her partner was, and they had a lot of Aboriginal friends. And I told her about the practice of Ghana, which is mindfulness, and a mindful practice or Ghana practice is a spiritual practice. And yeah, she went away and started practicing, and it does take practice, and got her life back. And she's going great guns today. We're Facebook friends, but that's just one of many. But I was telling this story to the manager of alcohol and other drugs and mental health services in my LHD, which means local health district, in Lismore, which covers all the hospitals from Grafton to Tweed Heads. And I was telling her that, and also I mentioned a stat that just came out of Black Dog at that time, which showed 72% of people who suicide are known to the mental health system. 72%. That's nearly 3 out of 4. It's a disgusting stat. And she said, John, what are we doing wrong? And I said to her, I said, there's no culture or spirituality in mental health service. It's just non-existent. It's not there. I said, and it needs to be. Yeah, so that's really just a little bit of my mind on that. Yeah, thanks, Hayley.
Thanks, John. I just want to before I jump to Richard, I just want to draw out a little bit of what you said, and I'll be quick, Richard. Sorry, I know I'm not a panelist, I'm the facilitator, but it's I think it's important, and because I've got lived experience as well. So much of what you said tied into my personal experience, the experience of my peers, and also to what Faye was talking about this morning as well. That spirituality, the idea that sometimes the system says you can't do anything, you won't contribute. But that power of the lived experience peers and the community that reaches out to us and says, yes, you can, come walk with me. And I just think that's so important. And again, why the voice of lived experience is so crucial, that we listen, that we speak, that we can amplify our voices to share that experience. So thank you, John. Yeah, that really resonated with me. I'm going to now cross over to you, Richard. We're now crossing over to Richard. Can you share your...
worried about that word, crossover.
Can you share your experience with service providers, Richard?
My experience with a service provider was a psychiatrist recommended by DVA when I was going for my pension. He got a scrap of paper out of his top drawer. It had 10 questions on it. And he said, answer these questions. I answered all of them satisfactorily, to as far as he was concerned. He said, yeah, you've got PTSD. I said, oh, okay. I don't believe that, but thanks anyway for the diagnosis. What do I do now? And he basically said, really, you should just go home, vegetate and die, because there's no hope. There's no cure. There's nothing we can do about it. Now, I'll just, in explaining that a bit more, that was 1995, and there was very little written or known about PTSD as it stands. I actually went back to my medical doctor and said, okay, I've been diagnosed with PTSD, what do I do? And she said, what's that? And so both her and myself set off on this path to research it and find out what was going on. And all the information was coming out of the States. That I think woke me up a little bit and thought, well, I'm not going to go home, vegetate and die. I will look into this and see what we can do. So I spent the next probably 10 years going on to combat PTSD courses at Toowong Private. We had visiting psychologists from British Columbia University came out twice for confrontational therapy, live in 10 days, and it was very confrontational. I've tried CBT, I haven't tried shock. I won't allow that to happen, to try shock therapy in any way, shape or form. None of them worked. With the courses and I've done some courses online and all that with some people in Sydney University and that. And while you're on the course, you're okay. You are getting some positive affirmations. You're getting some answers. But like the Toowong experience was 6 weeks into the 10 weeks course, we had to tell them, the guys there, to stop telling us how bad we felt. We said, we want to know what we can do from here on in. And at that stage, they had no strategies. They were the ones that told us there was no cure for it. So we had to battle on with it. So I chose after a while I was not getting the answers and all that type of thing, to find my own therapy. And I went back and I picked up my camera, and that was probably one of the things that saved my life. My father told me many years ago, he was an avid photographer and I used to follow him around. He said, there is a photo in every day and there's beauty in anything. He said, so just look for it. And that's exactly what I've done. I enjoyed photography. I've now researched therapeutic photography for the last 4 years. It's now coming into its own in art therapy. And I'm in the same gallery that Lisa is. We're good friends, and the experience of selling your art is wonderful. It's just great.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Richard. I got a little emotional there. I think that quote from your dad, there's a photo in every day and beauty in everything, so find it. What an amazing kind of mentality to hold on to, especially after everything you've been through as well, and the way you've been treated. To be able to hold on to that mentality is really beautiful. So yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm going to write that quote down, which I already have, and hold on to it and get it tattooed across my forehead or something. I don't know, something radical like that. Okay, maybe not.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you so much. I want to ask a powerful question from all of our panelists now, again, starting with Laura. I want to ask you all, what is a change you would like to see within society and services? Laura.
So trauma around my intersectionality is really closely tied to my son. And my son is 20 and he was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And the pediatrician 18 years ago said, he handed me a piece of paper with the word autism written on it. And he said, he won't speak and he won't live independently, and kind of sent me on my way. I was living in Mackay. No, there was dial-up internet back then. There was nothing. And throughout his life of us trying to gain an inclusive experience, the same that his younger sister would receive with education, we faced a lot of isolation as a family even, which was really hard. And then there was also in the media and playing out on social media, this huge fear around autism as well. And so much was being written about what was the cause and what was how to cure it. And it has been the most frustrating thing. And I would love to have seen retrospective, which is impossible, but moving forwards, far less spent on that, in fact, zero. And with all those funds instead guided towards supporting neurodivergent folk, because we all have incredibly unique skills and talents and challenges. Even people who you'll hear, functionality levels, which I don't use myself, but you'll hear them, they say they're nonverbal and that they can't do anything and whatnot. Really, that's just limiting what they can do. It's self-limiting for them. So yeah, I would love to see all emphasis put on improving the 38.1% unemployment rate of autistic people in Australia, improving the shorter lifespan autistic people have, improving the fact that we are more likely to be bullied at school or in the workplace than any other disabled person. So they're the things that are really important to me. I do a lot of advocacy in that sphere also. Yeah, they're the things that cause pain.
Yeah, Thanks so much, Laura. And yet supporting people, less about cure and cause, and let's support people in all of their uniqueness.
I just want to interject, like throughout those 18 years post his diagnosis, I can remember one of the cures we were told was to drink camel's milk, for him to drink camel's milk. No evidence-based. But parents are so scared, you know, like I understand why they are. And it's just that, you know, there's so many times that they're taken advantage of because they want to, it's fraught with a lot of, I'm not even going to continue this conversation, but yeah, there's just a lot going on and a lot needs to change.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks so much, Laura. Thanks for sharing those insights and yeah, what you would like to see. I'm going to ask the same question now to John. What do you think? What's the change you'd like to see?
Yeah, change. Well, people are just naturally resistant to change, that's for sure. And, you know, one of the things I often hear or a question I ask is, why do you do it that way? Because that's the way we've always done it. I hate that response, honestly. It's so lame. You know, I come out of a dream, kind of a dream, 6 or 7 years ago, with an acronym, PACE. And PACE stands for presence, awareness, connection, and empathy. And that became the basis of a mentoring course I put together for people to be mentors. Presence, and, you know, quite often services or even mental health professionals, I'm not knocking them, of course, but they're not present because they've got an agenda. And when you're talking to them, they're not listening to you. They're focused more on what they're going to say next or their agenda. So I'd really love to see more presence, that's for sure. Awareness. Well, you know, our society needs awareness. And awareness really is another word for mindfulness. To be more aware of what our minds are doing, that's for sure, for one thing. Aware of our feelings, aware of our emotions, aware of others as well. So we need a lot more awareness, that's for sure. Connection. Well, connection is threefold. You know, connecting with where we are and coming back to where we are over and over again, which is mindful practice. Coming back to the here and now, the present moment, and connecting with where we are. It doesn't matter where we are, and we can do this any time of day. And we use our 5 senses for that. Our sight and hearing, smell, taste, touch, if you're with a partner. Just connecting. And also connecting with full presence with who we're with. It's the greatest gift we can give our loved ones, our full presence. I know in the years when I wasn't well, when my mind was going 1,000 miles an hour, and I don't know how many times I heard my kids say, "Dad, have you been listening to me?" Because my mind just wasn't there. And we sense it in others when they're not there. And others sense it in us. So to be present, it is a gift. And also connecting with our source energy, you know, with our spiritual selves. Just connect. Without picking on Christians pray, 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 pray. But they don't necessarily pause their minds to listen, to receive. Because all through history, look at the great creators of things, inventors, artists and musicians. They source things out of nothing. That's creativity. It comes from nothing. So when we start connecting with that nothingness, where everything is, wow, it switches on our creativity and our intuition. So I hope that answers what, the change I'd like to see in services and in our society. Pace. And let's pace ourselves with presence, awareness, connection, and empathy.
Hallelujah. Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, what a good one to remember. Thank you so much. And lastly, same question to you, Richard. What is a change you would like to see within society and services?
Yeah, I think John covered most of it. I would like to see psychologists treating people with PTSD in particular to have lived the experience. I need them to be like people from Finding North, that you can talk to them, you know that they're listening, you know they have some understanding of what's going on, and not just taking everything out of a textbook. I don't know how many psychologists I've been through, and it just gets to the point where when they start saying, did you like your mother? I get up and walk out. They have no idea. And I also need to see family members educated a lot more in what PTSD does to people, and any mental illness. They need to be as knowledgeable in it as the person that's suffering, so that they can connect, they can support, and not do the wrong things by them. My wife went to a DVA talk for wives or partners of Vietnam vets, only to learn that she was actually enabling me by being sympathetic and making excuses for me. It was allowing me to continue on the way I was. That was, to me, I was being accepted that way. I soon learned not to do that. It's important for people outside to know all the different nuances that go with PTS, not just depression, not just anxiety, not just anger. They were the three that most psychologists treat. They also need to know that not everybody is receptive to CBT or the things that they prescribe. That's why I think art therapy, they should be passing people off or recommending to go into paraprofessionals that do art therapy, any of those therapies. And DVA should hire people like us. We're the ones that should be looking after the vets and their applications and so forth, because we have a greater understanding than DVA ever will.
Amazing.
Thank you for letting me get that out.
Thanks. You did amazing, and with 22 seconds to spare on my clock. So congratulations, everyone. And I think that yeah, it's so important, that peer support that has continuously been a theme. And of course, we all have different experiences, don't we? Some will be overlapping and some will be different, and it's important to acknowledge all of those experiences. Some people are going to have fantastic experience with service providers, some are not. And we want to hear all those experiences, and we want to learn from what does work and what doesn't work, and try to do more of what does work and less of what doesn't. And I think Laura, John, Richard, you've all been able to share with us what does work, holistic views, genuinely connecting, genuinely listening, really just being genuine. I think that that works. And people who've been there and done it, walking alongside people who are also there and who are trying to do it. That's what we want to see, and that's what we're doing today, isn't it? Perspectives, lived experience. We're sharing it, we're hearing it, we're connecting through that experience and learning from different perspectives as well. So I want to thank all of our amazing panelists, Laura, John, Richard, for sharing your incredibly rich insights. I'm walking away with so much today, and a face tattoo, apparently. I shouldn't have said that on camera. And I'm sure we could continue these conversations all day, all week, let's be honest. If our attendees, who we're getting lots of thumbs up, laughter, clap, love from, if you would like to continue the conversation, if you've got any questions for our incredible panelists, you can of course head to findingnorthnetwork.com.au. All of our panelists are very active on Finding North Network, so you could directly message them on there if you've got a question or a discussion you'd like to have. Crystal has just shared the link there in the chat. You can also post your reflections or your thoughts from the panel into the live feed on Finding North Network if you'd like as well. But that brings us to the end of the panel. So thank you again to all of our panelists, and I'm going to hand over to Phoebe Kingston for a final close. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Hayley. Wonderful facilitation as always, and from me, thank you panelists, Laura and John and Richard. That was fantastic. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I'm sure they did. There was lots of little emojis floating across the screen at the end there, so I think everybody's really got a great deal of value out of that, including myself. And I'm just going to I don't want to use the phrase close it down, that didn't sound very positive. I'm going to just do a final reflection to end part one, day one of our Perspectives 2022 experience today. I can't wait for tomorrow. Today's topic of leadership is, you know, it's a really, really hot topic. But before I just do a reflection on that, I just wanted to also acknowledge the land that I am coming from, which Noongar, a land here over in WA. I didn't do it at the beginning because we're heading straight into a big proper acknowledgement from John, but I'm over in WA. Tomorrow when we kick off, I'm going to do a little recognition to lived experience, so don't want to take up lots of reflection time today doing that, and I think everyone is probably very reflected out, presented out. Our ears are all flapping with the amount of content that's gone in today, so I just wanted to make this little bit, maybe perhaps a bit of a gentle wind down. And so I was going to simply reflect on the idea that leadership really isn't exclusive to professional or voluntary roles. It's something that we all do in our own lives, our families, our communities, environments, and networks. And I really wanted to make a point that grassroots leadership has a particularly powerful potentiality. If we're nurturing and we are really authentically nurturing within our own families and communities, that's what makes a leader. And if that leader then identifies with a cause, especially one that is rooted in social injustice, if that leader that has been nurtured in their own environment identifies with a cause and is really rooted in the coalface of other entities and bodies and networks, then what tends to happen is a really intentional set of actions that can lead to grassroots change agency. And where does some of the best change agency stem from? From grassroots. And that's all of us. That's we all should have our roots at the very, very core of our experiences in our own smaller familial environments, environments in services, environments in the community. And so, as Faye was saying, we can all be leaders. And even historically, some of our very famous figures that have been known as fantastic leaders, there are often people behind the scenes who are just as strong and powerful leaders that do that from the back, do that from underneath. They're not up front and center stage. They're leaders that are legends in the making, and they're very much talked about in other circles. And it is sometimes those leaders that are the architect and the inspiration of some of the accomplishments of others and organizations even as well. So there are leaders we see, and there are leaders that we don't see. And I'll finish by thanking every single person who is either presented, who is here, watching, listening, that's in the backstage crew, in the other part of this Zoom events platform, everyone at my, literally everybody, and all the organisational representatives that have attended as well. So really wanted to thank everybody for coming. I really hope you enjoy tomorrow and you come back and join us tomorrow. We've got another fantastic day prepared and ready for you. Getting very excited already. Again, there are lots of help and support line numbers that have been in the chat. So if anybody is just feeling it might have been a bit too much, please make use of those numbers. And for any of the rest of us who might need a little bit of nurture after today, it can be really intense. Do something nice for yourself now that the day is ending. Do some nurture. Be kind to yourself. You deserve it. You were here. You were in it. You're part of it. And you're deserving of having a nice wind down now. John's just put a little message in. This is, I love, this is your favourite. It's fast becoming one of my favourites, John. Be mindful, pause, and connect. So thank you everybody so much. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.